Hi everyone, it's Rena. So this video is if you have your Sun in Sagittarius and Taurus rising. And I looked on my channel to see if I had done this combination and was pleasantly surprised that I hadn't done it because I have this combination. I think I have mentioned this multiple times. I know I've mentioned it multiple times, and it's going to be a lot of fun to do this one because I know all about it. A famous person that has this combination is Miley Cyrus. And once I found out that Taurus was her rising sign, I already knew that her sun was in Sag, although she is on the cusp with Scorpio because I think her birthday is November 22nd or maybe 23rd. I think it is the 20th. Oh, it might be the 23rd. Maybe it's the 24th. But it really is on the cusp with Scorpio. However, she is an official Sag with Taurus rising. And the reason that, I kind of smiled or, at least internally when I found this out is because I remember when she was transitioning from being a child star into kind of more of an adult persona or material that she was going to be promoting, but she wasn't an adult yet. I don't even think she was 18 yet. I think she might have been about 17 or 16. Some of you will remember this, and I'm not, she's from a different generation than I am, and it wasn't like I'm not an expert on Miley Cyrus's musical adventures, although I've seen a number of her videos. But I remember this video, I think it was called Can't Be Tamed. And I found it to be kind of fake and, cheesy, like trying to be like, oh, wow, I'm so wild and all this stuff. And she was in a cage and she was just, acting like she's a wild animal or something. But it was that awkward, uncomfortable bridge between someone who I believe at the time was still underage and trying to be more grown up and therefore sexy. Now, of course, she was probably following the playbook of Britney Spears, because at that time Britney had already made it, and I'm sure Miley looked up to her and wanted to have the same kind of career, the way that Britney was able to do it. But Britney is a Sagittarius, but I think her rising sign is Libra. I should say she's a Sagittarian. Her rising sign is Libra, so there's a bit of a difference. Oh, yeah, and that's what I wanted to kind of compare her to Miley, because Miley comes across a little bit cruder than Britney. I think a lot of you will agree who, know about both of these artists is that Britney always had that kind of, I don't know, a veneer, kind of that sheen, that even when she was doing things that were sexy, she still came across in a pretty classy way. And I think that Miley hasn't always accomplished that. Not that Miley has wanted to. Miley is a totally different person, and Miley has like an amazing voice. And I think that Miley has really been able to achieve some great things coming from that child star background, which doesn't always offer the artistic cred that people are looking for. It can seem very bubblegum and stuff like that. And I think she's really managed to transcend that. So, but I'm really talking about the way somebody is trying to promote themselves, because we could look at the rising sign that way very easily. And I'm not just talking about professionally, just what you're doing every day when you're getting dressed. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when you choose certain clothing, you are letting people know who you are. And obviously, it's not the ultimate version of yourself or who you want people, what you want people to think of you. And I remember hearing this. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would disagree with that, but it really stands to reason that if you dress a certain way, you're going to give a certain or make a certain impression on someone. And I was thinking about the singer Jewel, and I don't know how it all happened, but she happened to be in the same place as Bob Dylan. I think it was backstage at the Tonight Show or something like that maybe when Jay Leno was the host, or I don't know. But they were both in the same place, and she happened to cross paths with Bob Dylan, who's like a total legend. And she yelled at him allegedly, stop staring at my breasts. And I always thought of that. And I'd like to, I probably should have researched a little bit more because that was a long time ago that this happened. And I have a feeling that she wasn't wearing a baggy t-shirt. She probably was wearing something that showed off her girls. What can I say? So the point is that, and I don't know what her rising sign is, but the point is that when somebody has a rising sign like Taurus, it's very common, or I would say, I would imagine it's very common that the person has no qualms about showing off their body. But when you get somebody who has a sun in Sagittarius, it throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into things because Sagittarius is a totally different energy than Taurus. And this is why Sag and Taurus form an inconjunction. They're 150 degrees apart. Now, in my chart, they actually are that. They are close enough in degrees where they actually form an inconjunction. Some of you, it may not be like that. Maybe you have an early degree Taurus, late degree Sag, or something. It's possible. It might be possible that you have the sun and rising sign opposing one another. I don't know if that is possible. I'd have to think about that. I was thinking like more of the Scorpio and the Taurus, but I don't know if that would work out that way. Sometimes I try to get cute and, say these things when I haven't really looked at it, and it might be incorrect. So don't take my word on that. But anyway, it's just a very interesting situation because I don't really care about the actual official angle if it really forms an inconjunction. Just those two signs alone will still give an influence that is like that, where it's really awkward, where it doesn't seem to have common ground. So in the case of Sag and Taurus, Sag is the ruler of the ninth house. It's about expansion. It's about this person who is seeking higher truth, higher learning. So there's an intellectual component. There's a philosophical component. Taurus, the first earth sign. And that is the sign, and Sag is the last fire sign. So Sag is a winter fire sign, which means that it contains the wisdom of fire, being the last sign. Taurus is the first earth sign, so it has that youthful quality that, conveys a certain innocence, and it's connected to the earth element. So it's all about the tangibility factor, the things of this world and this earth. Now, one thing I guess you could say that they might have in common is self-indulgence, because Taurus's ruler is Venus and Sag is Jupiter, and both of these planets can be associated with the finer things in life, money, with Taurus being the rising sign, those of us who have this combination, we would say that Venus is our ruler. This can mean that the physical appearance, that the person is attractive or downright beautiful or handsome. Now, your sun sign, its ruler can also be considered your ruler as well. So being ruled by Venus and Jupiter, that's very, I don't know, I would say very positive. And this, I feel like both of these signs can be self-indulgent. So that might be the common ground, is like too much of a good thing, or just loving that side of things where you just like to just immerse yourself in sensual pleasures, or that's more of the Taurus. But the Jupiter is about the overdoing it sometimes, kind of excess. All right. But this is a very deceptive combination because, again, I'm not going to talk about men so much because I'm not a man, so I can't say how it would apply to men. But as a woman who experienced this when I was younger, I would wear the mini skirts. I'd wear the tight blouses or shirts and the short shorts or the whatever. I mean, it doesn't even have to be short shorts, but shorts but just anything that showed off the body. Why would I do something like that? It was just something that seemed like that was a thing to do. And you can't say that that's true of 100% of teenage girls, that that's what they do. It's not true. I think that I was really, and just being even that into appearance, I think that people with Taurus rising may be excessively into their appearance. And I also think that when the first Saturn return occurs around the age of 30, this is when that influence of Taurus will dissipate, because I know that happened with me, and I think I read it somewhere. I'm pretty sure that I didn't make that up. I think that I actually read that somewhere. And that's why I associate with the first Saturn return, because I know that that age of 30 corresponds with that. And it would make sense if you think about Saturn and what it represents and your Saturn return. Your Saturn return is when Saturn goes back into the sign it was when you were born. So right now, Saturn is in Aquarius. So those people who, have that in their natal chart, you're having your first Saturn return. And it can make a person feel like they are getting older. Saturn is, old age. And I think that's when you first start feeling your age, when you're around the age of 30. It's so funny because in following a content creator on YouTube since she was in her early 20s, and I noticed, I don't know if it was this year, there was a couple of them who were in their earlier part of their 20s, and after a certain time, they stopped saying how old they were, around the age of 26, 27, 28. And it's kind of funny because that, even if they're not going into that Saturn return yet, they still are getting that, they're getting, prepared for it, maybe on a subtle level, that they're going to stop looking at themselves as young. And this is one of those things that happens. I think it depends on, what your sun sign is. But for those of you who are sun in Sagittarius, you will tend to want to, you will tend to value youth, because fire energy is like that. It's kind of like the big kid, And that's why some people perceive Sagittarians as immature or irresponsible or what have you, because of that kind of youthful quality and that spontaneity that a lot of Sagittarius have. But as some of you know, if you have fixed signs like Taurus rising, you may not be as spontaneous as you're supposed to be. It may just be kind of a vibe where you're just in the moment, but when it comes to literal things happening, you may like to have a little bit of warning, or I know I'm like that. It's like I don't I like to I don't like certain things like that are just kind of like doing things on the spur of the moment, like, going somewhere special. I like to kind of plan in advance. There's certain things I'm not, and I know it's from that Taurus. And you might find that you have a stubborn streak in you. Sag is a mutable sign, so it's very flexible, but Taurus is a fixed sign, and it's not that flexible, and you have to look at your moon sign. But I can tell you, even my moon is in Virgo, and that's mutable too. And to me, the Taurus rising exerts quite an influence over my core personality traits, and I'm sure for many of you, you would agree. And even in terms of being an extrovert, like fire signs are supposed to be extroverted. I'm not extroverted. I'm extroverted now. I'm acting very expressive and everything, but I'm alone. My partner's in the other room, but he's over there. But I'm not in public. I'm very subdued. And some of you may be like that, and you might even be thought of as shy by other people because you're subdued and you're kind of more of that earthy Taurus energy. But I think that there's some good things that we could say about that. But I wanted to get back talking about the way that you dress and the calling card, because when you're younger, you may have that influence as more like the Taurus, and I'm speaking specifically to women because of this, because they're the ones that usually dress provocatively, and yet you may attract the wrong types of people as a result. You may attract people who really you can't converse with. A lot of Sages are intellectuals. And yes, I suppose there are other factors that would really seal the deal in that regard. But I think that, come on, ninth house, higher learning. But I'm not just talking about being an academic, somebody that is getting advanced degrees or anything like that. I'm just talking about on your own, because to me, that is the true sign of an intellectual, somebody that reads a book that is considered fine literature without having to have it assigned to them in a college classroom, or somebody who enjoys discussing an artist or whatever it is that you're involved with in depth with another person. And that to you is very entertaining or stimulating, mentally stimulating. And the funny thing, I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but I'm one of those people where it's like I'm a split personality when it comes to this. There's a part of me that loves trash. And I don't really mean that it's trash, intellectual trash. I love, I always used to read tabloids, and I love reading biographies and autobiographies of famous people. It's really funny because I've read multiple books by Tori Spelling, and she's a Taurus, and I really enjoyed them. I thought she was pretty. I thought she wrote pretty well too. But I love that kind of, um, side, of entertainment that's more base or whatever you want to call it. And then I also enjoy the higher pursuits intellectually as well. So I think that that can produce some very strange bedfellows where there's like you have a part of yourself that's very sophisticated when it comes to your interests, and then you may have some stuff that is very I don't know, earthy and less, like maybe you just have like guilty pleasures that are I can't think of anything. Maybe you like playing foosball. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something like that. But the point is that the in conjunction, it's very hard to bridge those two parts of the self. One thing to note, or that I would say, is that I believe that the rising sign can show the family of origin and what's going on there. And so with Taurus, it can be that you, because of this being an in conjunction, that you're the black sheep of the family, or if it wasn't kind of being ostracized necessarily or bullied, it might be that you just didn't feel like you were like them, that you didn't fit in. Like they were more of that worldly type of individual. So you might have been raised that way. Now, in my particular case, I have other inner planets that are Earth. So it's easier for me to accept being raised that way without feeling that it was really like not who I was. I can identify with the earth element. Some of you may have a really difficult time, however, and that can make the differences between your sun and rising sign that much more pronounced. And when that occurs, if you are a woman and you are finding yourself presenting yourself as trying to be sexy, and yet you are a very brainy person, you may even express annoyance that you are being treated in a certain way or perceived in a certain way. And you have to get honest with yourself and say, I am contributing to this because I'm choosing to advertise myself in this way by dressing this way. With me, it was a little bit different because I do have other Earth inner planets, and I was more comfortable with that, the kind of the grounded, earthy aspect. So it wasn't something that I would look at and revile and say, oh, that's so horrible. But I do think sometimes women do that, and then they don't question, why are you presenting yourself in this way if you don't want to be perceived that way? And what people say after that, or women say after that, is because I have the right to do this without having somebody try to hit on me or look at my chest or look at my butt or whatever and objectify me. I have that right. And I'm not buying that argument, because men are very visual, and that's just how it is. And so if you put yourself out there like that, you're going to get attention. And maybe you can't admit it to yourself, but you want that attention. Maybe you don't want somebody to, actually get physical and grab a body part or anything like that, but you still might want admiration, attention, what have you. And maybe you're kind of out of touch with that because of the other influences that are making you think that you're above all of that. So in terms of relationships or how you view them, Obviously, you'd need to know more than the sun. I'd like to know the moon sign because Taurus is a feminine sign. The earth and the water are feminine. So if you have the moon in earth or water, let's say you have the moon in Pisces, and you may be somebody who is very romantic and you're very comfortable, for instance, as a woman, being more demure, like being kind of like less aggressive. If you're speaking of aggressive, what if your moon sign is Aries or Leo and other fire energy? You might be somebody who does think like, hey, I have the right to do this, no matter what. And nobody's arguing with that. But, there has to be consistency. And I think that when there is a hard angle between the sun and the rising sign, or a weird angle, and in conjunction, I'm not sure if they label that a hard angle. It certainly is not harmonious. So I'm sure that it would be considered hard, but it's just very, very awkward. So, but the thing is that the inconsistencies can create a lot of what was I going to say, like self-marketing issues. If you're trying to promote yourself, whether it's going on a job interview, going on a date, there just might be this contradiction in things. And the other person may find it confusing. They might not think that you're necessarily a phony or that you're hiding something, but they just may find you hard to figure out, and that can create, problems in promoting yourself. So it may be hard for other people to get a handle on you, in other words. So what can you do about this if we look at it as more challenging? First of all, I would say, depending on how it is that you dress, how it is that you present yourself, ask yourself why. What is the core reason? Do self-inquiry. Really trace it to the core of what it is that you are looking to do. I actually had a period of time in my life where I said that I was being pretty in order to brighten up the world. And I sincerely meant it. It wasn't said to justify anything. And it brought me a lot of joy until I got to a point where I outgrew it. I think Sag in general, unless you have the moon in Libra, perhaps, or maybe if it's the moon is in Taurus, that could present itself with a similar thing. But Libra seems to be a big one where this occurs. That you may, if you don't have that moon sign, you may be able to let go of that superficial need of Taurus to be the hottest woman in the room. This is not necessarily an ego thing. It could be just this feeling of wanting to shine and wanting to be beautiful, to, like a flower or something. But regardless of the reasoning behind it, you may let go of that at some point, and you may grow into your Sagittarius qualities. Become more introspective, philosophical, that kind of thing, and less in need and more like confident within yourself. Because unfortunately, I do think that sometimes insecurity causes this. And I would definitely say with myself that this was the case because I hadn't developed my true talents yet. And if you do have a background in low self-esteem, it's kind of a cheap and easy way to get approval from other people or admiration or whatever you want to say, and being treated better and things like that. And it's one of those things that, when I look back on it, it didn't really get me anywhere anyhow. Now, there are some people there are some women that are able to capitalize on their looks, but unfortunately, in some of those cases, they can get involved in relationships that are very, that's a kind of an extreme. I was going to say almost like prostitution, in the sense that there's like kind of a tit for tat quality to it. I've done videos on the hard angles between Venus and Pluto. So if you have a square or opposition from Venus to Pluto, this may be, or even a conjunction, this may be something that you're grappling with and that you're too smart to get caught up in, but you might get caught up in anyway. And actually, the people that are the people with this combination, if they find that they have traded on their looks, they may be able to see exactly what they're doing as they're doing it, and that can be a saving grace, because it allows them to know how that is going to play out for themselves. Because if, for instance, if you go into a marriage or a live-in situation with somebody and you don't love that person, and you know that they're using you because you're like younger and hot and you're like the trophy girlfriend or wife, and that person is just like really successful and you get to live that lifestyle, but you know that you're just playing these roles, you know that there's not really love there, you're going to be perceptive enough to know exactly what you're getting into, so that if it's something temporary, you're able to extricate yourself. The problem is some people, they get absorbed in their role and then they forget that it was a tit for tat situation. They're looking for love and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have love in my life. Well, that's not the choice that you made. And so anyway, I think that you can avoid certain pitfalls because of that philosophical nature sometimes. But in terms of actual relationships, you may attract the attention of earth signs, water signs, who see you in that earthy way that you may carry yourself in. And what can be a problem, maybe possibly with the exception of Virgo, is that the water signs may be too clingy for you or intense when it comes to Scorpio, or the earth signs may be too stodgy for you. Like a Taurus person may be too set in their ways and they just want to sit on the couch all night. I know I'm going to piss off some Taurus people if they happen to listen to this for some reason. But, Sag, well, I'll say something to you. I can ride a couch with the best of them, so I'm not going to lie. But Sag is expansive, and that tends to lend itself to people who stay active, who don't want to just sit at home all the time. They want to get out and have new experiences. So usually the best kind of person for you is going to be either another fire sign or an air sign, because they're going to have similar traits like that. And in terms of valuing freedom. So just keep that in mind. In terms of professions, Sag is a teacher, so anything where you're the teacher, and especially a spiritual teacher. Now, if I call myself as an astrologer a spiritual teacher, I try not to do that, but if I did do that, I would include the fact that, hey, I'm grounded in my description, that it's practical spirituality, that's not stuff that's very abstract. Even with astrology, I do keep it down to basics because I feel like there are a lot of mental abstractions that lead to engaging in issues in a very, it might seem very sophisticated, but it really can be, in some cases, spiritual and psychological bypassing, because you get so caught up in, all of these different astrological things or whatever the spiritual belief system is, that it takes you away from your own, situation that you are participating in directly. It kind of removes you from yourself and what you're doing. So I like to just bring it back to the self. So and when I'm listening to someone who is spiritual, I mean, I've listened to stuff that has, about the galactic history of the universe, or all these things that are happening. But the thing is, I always bring it back to, how does this impact me in a practical level, on a day-to-day level? And that can be the kind of thing that you are interested in. And also, if you're a teacher, a spiritual teacher, that you want to impart upon others. So maybe you're actually a yoga teacher where that physicality comes into play. I feel like you might be somebody who loves the outdoors. That might be another thing that these two signs have in common. And so anything that involves even like a somebody who works on a cruise ship, or where they get to travel. I don't know how many travel agents exist anymore, but you're also selling. So you might have a business or something like that where you're able to travel, and then also the practical side of that as well. And anything creative, because fire energy is creative, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. So if you're handy, if you're crafty, or you love to make jewelry or things like that, you might be good at that. And in relationships, you need somebody who's going to give you that freedom, as I stated. So I think I better leave it here. I hope that you resonated. Sag, if you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.